Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Sasheen. Welcome to Women in Transition. Today, I'm going to talk to you about why the advocacy that you are searching for out in the world needs to start in your own life, and then it won't be so hard to see it out in the world. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is simply we want people to advocate for things in our lives, right? We want people to be willing to step up to the plate and take on the mantle of advocating on behalf of things and causes and people. But so few of us, or so many of us, are afraid of advocating in our own life for the things that would make our lives better, easier, much more focused, full, fruitful. And so it's very difficult to see advocacy happening outside of yourself when your whole world isn't the way you want it to be. This is a time period where it's really easy to figure out who your allies are not because people are telling on themselves, and that's perfect. We want people to tell on themselves. But I also think this is a really good time to look around your own life at where are you advocating in your life, in your existence, for the life that you wish to see happen in other people's lives. So, for example, if you want people to be free from tyranny, are you free from tyranny in your own life, or are you propping up a dictator in your own space, but calling it family or calling it love or calling it a relationship you can't quit or a job that you can't leave? If you want people to be empathetic and you want people to advocate for being kinder and more understanding, but you're not advocating in your own life against people who are bullying you or people that you love, how can you look outside of yourself for advocates when you yourself can't even advocate in your own space? And so this isn't a indictment, but it is a call to clarity that I want you to see happening around you when you're like, I don't understand how come people aren't speaking more loudly. And I want you to understand it's because sometimes it's easy to advocate outside of ourselves, but when you can't advocate inside of your own space for the things that you wish to see happen, for the life that you believe everyone should have, including you, then it's hard for people to sustain advocacy when their own lives don't reflect the end of the advocacy that they want to see. They can't sustain that energy because you're still fighting the bully in your own life because you won't fight them. You're still enduring the tyrant because you won't fight them. You're still limiting your freedom because you won't seek it. You're still giving away your rights in your own life, which is why it's difficult to march every weekend for rights for somebody else, even though you really want to and you think you're going to, but then it gets hard, right? I said in my last video, couple of videos ago, MLK and luminaries such as himself didn't set out to save a whole world. They set out to save their world, their slice of the world in their own life, where things are happening inside their own lives. And they set out one thing at a time to fix their lives, their everyday lives. And in doing so, they changed the whole fabric of history. You may not want to change the whole fabric of history. You may just want your life to look different. But if you are not ready to advocate in your own life, and push for changes just in your own little square, you're not going to change anything else around you. And that status quo that you would like to see change is not going to change for you if you don't look at your own box and say, I can't support this behavior in my own life and fight for it, or I can't support this own behavior in my own life, but fight against it out there, right? I can't support bullying in my own life, allowing people to bully me or my children or my family. I allow it here, but I'm going to fight for it out there. No, you can't sustain that because you go out to fight against the bullies, but you come home to be bullied. And then you think this is okay because of love or job or circumstances or connections, but that's not, because I'm fighting for other people. It is not making your martyrdom for others does nothing for others, because you yourself need to be martyring for yourself. You need to be the martyr for your own cause first. Because let me tell you something. If you do look around history, you will see that people rose up because their lives were hurting. Not because somebody 3 countries over, their lives were hurting, but because their lives right here where they stood were hurting. And it's so important as women of a certain generation, we understand loyalty to a fault. We understand bending to the will of a society that barely sees us but expects a whole lot out of us. And that is why I'm asking you to think about how you're going to reinvent your advocacy so that your activism starts at home, starts with you. You cannot be an activist or an advocate for policies, procedures, peoples, places, things, if you cannot be an ally, an advocate, or an activist for yourself. You can't do it. And you're going to try to do it, but you can't do it because you haven't stopped to say, how does my internal advocacy match the external thing that I'm fighting for? How does my internal world match the external world that I want to see? If I want a better world for my children, I am more likely to fight for a better world for your children. By extension, right? As an educator for 20 something years, I would walk into the classroom and I taught public speaking and I still teach public speaking. And one of the things that I would always say to my students, in this classroom is a safe space to speak the things that maybe your voice shakes when you're saying it. And we would get into some tense conversations sometimes. And I would say to them, I will fight for your right to speak your truth, even if your truth isn't my truth. But I will not fight for your right to speak your truth if it comes at the expense of my truth. I've been saying that for 20 something years. So when I say now, I fight for the things that are important in my space, and I recognize that many people do not fight for things that are important to me because I am not important to them. Therefore, I see that, but I also understand that my space and what I'm fighting for is the same. I'm not fighting for your space. I'm fighting for mine, because if your space requires my space to cease to exist for you to exist, then why the heck would I be fighting for you instead of fighting for me? And that is what we need to be thinking about. That is what women need to think about, right? Like, that is what we need to focus on. What is it in your world? The magical 7, remember those? What is it in your world that you are advocating for and fighting for on the micro level? Let the macro figure itself out. We'll talk more about that later. The micro level is where you have to figure out how big your boat's going to be, what you're going to put in that boat to get you from point A to point B. What's in your toolkit? What's in your lifeboat? Because again, you cannot possibly advocate and be an ally for things in other people's lives that you are not willing to advocate or be an ally for in your own life. And that goes for a cause as near and dear to you as the health and safety of the food supply in your own communities, to the clean air and drinking waters in your own cities, right? So fighting for other people to have clean water and clean air and good food makes no sense if your food is toxic. It doesn't make any sense to be fighting at somebody else's toxic food supply if your food supply is toxic, right? That is for everything in your life. And this is why it's so important for you to think about, who am I advocating for and what am I advocating for? Who am I an ally to and what am I an ally to? And if the answer isn't me, myself, and I, then you need to reassess why it is that you're being an advocate or an ally to anybody else. Please click like, subscribe, and share, and tell me, are you advocating for yourself? Are you building your boat big enough for you to be safe in? Or are you so concerned with building a boat big enough for everybody that you are almost drowning? Something to think about. Click like, subscribe, and share, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.